There are people who really appreciate moving water. And they can stand next to a river and they watch the river flow and the dynamics of it, and it's a very intriguing kind of aesthetic that fills you with a great deal of pleasure and joy and comfort even. And then there's a second level. There are people who they go swimming in the river, or they get in a boat and go down the river, and they get a much more dynamic and integrated sense of the river and its flow. And then there's the third way, and that's the ecosystemological way. I become the river. I am the river. I am nature. I cannot be a whole person unless I'm integrated into and appreciative of and have respect for all living things. I was born in Chicago, and so I had a family that would allow us to be on our own, to go where we want, but I had to be in earshot of my mother's whistle.
He always loved the water. We went camping and swimming in Lake Michigan at the Indiana Dunes State Park, and the first time we went up there, he was 9 months old. He was just learning to walk. And he walked straight out into Lake Michigan, water right over his head. She had a hard time getting him out of the water. He loved it.
There was a lot of land where I lived, which was open space. So I made spears and forts. I literally lived in trees or on the land. So there was a deep land ethic connected to what I was doing. So what we're doing this morning is making focaccia, an Italian-style bread. And this is my particular formulation. I actually got into bread making as a young man. My grandmother was a wonderful cook. We were very poor. So when you turn the oven on, you bake for the whole week. If there's any antagonism in your life or hostility towards others, you can simply remove that from your life by kneading the dough and getting all of your aggressions out. Baking bread was always a wonderful treat and aroma. So it's been with me my whole life. I was not suited to come into the university. I was too immature, too lacking in any focus, not knowing really what to do. So I joined the Navy.
Wow! Come on, groove it on.
One of the great disabilities that has been an enormous asset to me is my color blindness, which prevented me from taking a position at the Naval Academy. So I ended up on the deck force. I was on a destroyer. Eventually I became a sonarman. I also was an atomic vet, so that means I participated in live atomic depth charges in the Navy. That was life-changing because there's no film, no experience like being in one. I became deeply committed to the environment and to the ocean. I got out of the Navy and came to Berkeley, I still didn't have a direction or a focus. You know, you sit and have coffee and talk Karl Marx and poetry and jazz. I was involved more and more in various environmental issues. I'm one of the founding members, not the founder, but the founding members of the Berkeley Ecology Center, and was really engaged in helping everyone there learn how to organize it, manage it, set up operations. The next thing I did was I'm the co-founder of the first urban recycling program in America with a group called Ecology Action. And we started this with nothing, knowing nothing. In those days, you didn't have a marketplace for recycled material. It was horrendous. And you had to take every can and you stomped it by hand and crushed it. And glass, and you had to sort it by all the colors. It was horrendous, and if it wasn't for volunteers and people self-distributing, it wouldn't have happened. I've developed hundreds of recycling programs since then, but they all started with that one in 1967 in Berkeley.
I met Loren when he and I were both 23 years old. I had come out to California from Indiana for a vacation, and I was visiting with my aunt, and she said, well, let's go over to Ruth Cole's house. She has a swimming pool. So we went over there to swim, and he happened to just be there. He felt sorry for me, and he knew I was going to Disneyland. So he said, is it okay if I come along with you to Disneyland? And he asked my aunt that, so he went along with me. We hung out together the whole time and had a very wonderful time. And the next day I flew back to Indianapolis, and I said, well, maybe one of these days we'll meet again. Well, he bugged me. He kept calling me when I was going out on dates with other people, so he says, well, I'm coming out to see you. No, you didn't. I will come back. And so I went back in November, stayed for a couple weeks, and he's proposed marriage to me at that time, and we got married in January. So we basically spent like 2 weeks together total before we got married. Probably a good idea, because if we'd known each other longer, we probably never would have gotten married, because we were both strong-headed people, so.
I struggled as a person and was very, very uncertain about where I go. I had 7 majors in college. How do I fit in? I'm not in a discipline. I'm a whole systems person. I reflect upon all of the factors that come into play. I have never understood, and to this day don't, if nature is so complex that you have to divide it up into botany, biology, zoology, entomology, whatever it is, okay, fine, you study it, but who's putting the pieces back together? And so when I went to prepare my presentation to the Graduate Council, the first thing they asked is, what is it you're studying? I said, ecosystemology. And they said, what is it? And I says, well, it's being a specialist on the understanding, management, and appreciation of whole systems. You mean you're going to know everything about entomology and geology and botany? And I said, no, I'm not going to know everything about those specialties, but I'm going to know how they interrelate with one another and what they do. So they let me do it, and I got it. It became clear that there was no role for me to play in the university, no tenure track. No, they didn't know what to do with me, and I got the message. At first I thought, well, why don't I go see if there's another organization that might want to move in this direction. I did some exploring with some groups. None of them did. They all had their own theme. So it was Wes that just said, Loren, why don't you create your own? And so Inquiring Systems was formed. We started ISI in Berkeley, and we were there for our first 8 years. In 1995, when we moved up here, land in Berkeley, you couldn't afford it. Up here, it was still difficult, but I was able to find this piece of land. The name itself is indicative of what we do. First, we're systems people. We think in systems, we act systemically, looking at the world as a system. The second part of this is the inquiring part. When you go into another setting of any kind, a garden, East Oakland, Nepal, anywhere, you're encountering cultural, religious, behavioral patterns, environmental issues, their history, all of these factors. Inquiry means I have no preconceived notion of what I'm going to do inside that system other than the initial goal of not destroying it because I'm in it. All indigenous people have developed methods for survival, and they were very, very conscious of the interrelationships of all living things. In the last 200 years, technology has transformed our ability to overcome nature, and this has given a very false impression that we have the ability to control nature. In a system, in an ecosystem, the minute you become the manager and you isolate nature's own processes, you isolate yourself from these relationships. And it is not going to allow human beings to survive on this planet. It means you do have to learn to change your behavior, because the impacts and implications of your action are significant. The context of how you do business, how you treat employees, how you treat your customers, how you work within your community, where you get your resources to build your products. These principles have to be everywhere, in every way, for everything. That's what Inquiring Systems is. We're implementers of ethical social change.
And Loren's over here.
One of the things that Loren has done remarkably well is understanding how to put a solid business underpinnings into social mission projects. And I think he's been one of the few masters of that. The man's got a big heart and is generous with it. There's a generosity in his view of the capacity of people to do good things and to grow in the course of doing it. So this is not a man who condescends when he works with other people. He sees your possibility and raises it.
There were so many times when my vision felt too big, and a conversation with Loren would change it. I don't think anyone could have helped me the way Loren helped me.
In my life, when I look at the pantheon of people in my life, he's in the pantheon of the greats, of the people I've known in my life, people who influenced me.
I think one of the hallmarks of a person who has done a great job in life is to make yourself obsolete. And I think what Loren has done with setting up a legacy for ISI to be able to continue with or without him is one of the hallmarks of a true professional and a true innovator, and somebody who's really made a lasting impact.
If you know anything about bread baking, yeast requires a nurturing. It's something that every time you bake bread, you're taking some of it aside and then you feed it and grow it again. And that, I think, embodies the way that he kind of manages a lot of his relationships, where he'll help bake some and then let it go off and rise, and let the other part nurture and populate with the yeast and the leavening and all the things that will make it be that bread that people will want to eat.
Life is not forever. We all grow old. We all expect to die. There's no guarantee, no matter what you do, how safe a life you want to live or how healthy a life you want to live.
I thought he was too young to have this kind of diagnosis. He says, I'm okay with it. He says, when I was 7, I didn't think I'd be 8 because because of the chances that I took in life.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
Feels like that he's lived a good life.
It is the nature of all life on this planet to change, to evolve. These incredible principles that Loren has developed live in the fabric, not just of Inquiring Systems, but in the hundreds of other groups that have been touched by his incredible genius.
I have never been what we would call deeply contemplative about all of my work. I'm conscious of it, aware of what I've done, but I mean, I don't like rest on what I've accomplished. I'm always looking forward. I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I mean, I'm very fortunate in life to have found what I do well. So I'm not, just a workaholic, but I love the work I do and the people I relate to. I'm not ready to go yet. If I go sooner than later, then so be it. I'm not afraid of death, part of the cycle of life. If I am stressed, I connect with living things. I can sit and look at a weed and become internally reset, restored. A feeling of contentment comes over me. My spirituality is embedded in that connectivity and my deep respect and value of my being part of nature's own cycle.